All right, next we're going to talk about the slow and fast bump and rebound, which are your shocks. The old adage is you make that bump stiffer to reduce wheel hop. I don't know if I've ever felt wheel hop in this game. Or you increase the rebound, in other words, the shock expanding, to get and keep the tire back on the ground as soon as possible. So the slow bump controls how the suspension compresses during, braking, turning, accelerating, and so forth. The fast bump manages when your car goes over a curb or some sharp, uneven terrain, and so you can allow the shocks to quickly go up and then quickly get back down again. And all right, so one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this fast bump. Again, that curb in the chicane feels it wants to lift the car off the ground. I'd much rather glide over it than not. So this will allow that shock to compress under this fast changing setting. But I also don't want the rebound to like send it up in the air. So I'm going to drop this down a little bit. And let's keep those the same for now. And I'll do something similar to the slow bump. I'll make the fast bump here. I'm not going to make it as low as the front, just because the front is the one that's really carrying the weight of that curb. I haven't felt the rear end want to get off the curb yet. So let's just keep that up at 10, and we'll give it a shot. Here we go.
Hammer down now.
So going over the curbs that first route felt easy enough. Definitely felt easier going over those curbs. Wow. So 137.1. And again, I don't think I was trying my hardest there, but I will take that. So I'm going to save that setup. Nice. Something here that I haven't mentioned is the bump stop spring rate. Now, in all honesty, I don't know exactly what this does, but I'm going to assume that it has something to do with the spring compressing and maybe providing a little extra force as the shock gets closer to its maximum compression. So I had them set on a midway mark, and I'm going to play around with lowering those values, and I'll show you this whole setup when I'm done. But just my mindset is, it's making the shocks come down harder as opposed to smoother or something of that effect. I am still getting a little bit of I'm just not sure it's as stiff as I like. Maybe I should stiffen it. Well, like this is what this is for, right? So we play with it and we make it softer, we make it harder, and we try it out. And that's the long process of any of these things. So I'm gonna try a little bit on the softer side first, and we'll see if we get any better times. And at the last speed bump, and I dropped like 0.5 of a second or thereabouts. So I felt that was pretty good. It felt very consistent. So here we go. Okay, so added a few tenths of a second on that lap. And I'm going to try and make it a little bit stiffer than my previous setting and see where we go from there. All right, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to bring the fast rebound. It was in the 20s. I think I can get it like right at 5,000. Let's just put it in the low 3,000 range. Well, lowish. We'll see what we do. Just want to see how this handles. All right, here we go.
You're clear.
Okay, so I did notice the car sliding a little bit more. Probably just my driving. I'm not sure how much the dampener force is really going to affect a lot on this car. I mean, it's there for a reason. I'm just not familiar with how to adjust it. So I'm going to play around with it a little bit more. I'll let you know what I come up with when I'm done. All right, so I fell back on a previous setting. Whatever adjustments I made, if anything, they were slower, few tenths, couple tenths. And I went back to my original setting. Once the tires got warm, I was right back on the same mark as I was before. So I'm going to leave it at that. Um, again, there might be room for adjustment at a later date, but we're going to move on to the next topic. Okay, so I'm going to try this now. I've moved the slow bump, compression, and rebound to 8 on the front and rear. I want to see how this handles.
Clear.
It's possible that turn 1 and 2 feel a little bit better. Oops, that was a slow entry into that turn. So still in the 132 range. like I said, it somehow feels more comfortable, but I kind of feel a little less aggressive. So I'm gonna try this again. I'm gonna make the shock stiffer in the other direction. So we were at 10. Let's make them 12 or 14 and see if we feel like we can feel a difference. We, meaning me. All right, here we go. Okay, you can see here. So I bought the slow bump and rebound up to 14 on front and rear, and I've left the fast bump the same. It feels fine. I'm not sure what else I should be doing with that. Well, in the sense of it feels fine. Why change it? I'm not sure that it's going to improve anything if I do. So here we go. Let's drive them.
If it doesn't feel good, you can come in and we'll change some stuff. We've got time.
Even they're recognizing it doesn't feel good. Um, Again, felt fine, but just doesn't seem to be performing fine. A little bit more breaking loose um, in the corners. Hard to say what I'm feeling with that right now. It felt okay. It just didn't feel fast. I could feel it. And it could very well be my driving. Okay, so I'm going back to my original setting, my previous setting of having the uh, bump stop and the rebound set back to 10. Both the other two felt better, but I couldn't seem to produce the same results. So maybe it's just my driving style and where that is. And again, that's something that we always have to find out is what is working. And sometimes what's producing a fast, consistent lap isn't the easiest drive, or you can just kind of kick back and race. You've got to be on it. But that's the whole goal, right? Is to produce the fastest and most consistent laps. I'm just going to fall back on that setting, and we will continue from here. Okay, so now we're going to look at anti-roll bars. And in a nutshell, the anti-roll bars just help keep the car from doing body roll. And so to understeer less, you want to reduce the value of the front anti-roll bar. And to oversteer less, you want to increase the value of the front roll bar. So again, softer tends to make it grip more, turn in more. Stiffer will make it turn in less, in a nutshell. So we're going to attempt these. And I did and have felt during these driving times that the car just still feels a little squishy on some and others. And so we're going to see if the anti-roll bars can take some of this out. But welcome to tuning a car, is it could take you a while to really get it right, which is why people give up and go race someone else's tune and just call it good. But I find this fun. Here we go. Oh, I forgot. Here's an addendum to the anti-roll bar issue. Once your car is set, let's say you're going to move to another track and you're going to have to make some other adjustments there. When you adjust your front anti-roll bar, the rear has to be adjusted the same amount in the opposite direction, or vice versa. You're going to adjust something on the rear, the front has to be adjusted the same amount in the opposite direction. So again, for example, your front anti-roll bar, you're going to make it stiffer by a point or so many pounds per square inch, then the rear has to be reduced by the same amount. So whatever it is, whatever you do to the front or the rear, you have to do the opposite to the opposite end. Okay, so for right now, kind of want to stiffen everything up. I just feel like my responsiveness on this track has not been what I want it to be. So let's give this a roll, and we're going to save it under a different name. Whoops, where'd it go? There we go. keep the same time on there just because that's going to be the same goal at this point. All right, and then we're going to drive.
Clear.
Ooh, already feels better on that turn. We'll see what happens when the tires warm up. Also going to be curious to see what the tires to the inside of the majority of the track are going to do. When I stiffened the springs up during the spring adjustment, I noticed that my right tires went up like 1 psi and 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which put them in a better grip range for the tires, just cusping the bottom end of the green color. They're probably about 170 degrees at that point, which is a lot better than the 160 they've been running at. I slid through that turn. I've slid through that turn before, so it's probably just my driving and the cold tires. Little understeery there. Again, cold tires. Let's see what happens when they warm up. Ooh, a little slippery. Probably went to that turn a little too fast. Wanted to see if I could push it a little bit. It didn't work.
Try not to overdrive the entry. These things like building momentum in the motor. When you drive it too deep, it kills it.
Definitely feels better on that turn. Even this one. Don't feel like I'm running off into the dirt like I've done several times before. I feel like the rear's gripping a little better. Car's definitely not swaying as much through the chicane there. All right, so we're 9/10 off. Definitely feels better. Whoops, not right there. It feels better elsewhere. And remember what I said. I mean, sometimes it may feel better on one turn and not the other, and you have to figure out which is going to be best for you. Particularly in light of the fact that we still have 0 downforce on the wing in the back, or 0 degrees, whatever measurement that is on this. And I'm sure if we increase the downforce in the rear, it's going to hunker that rear down a lot more on turn 1. So I'm kind of willing to keep this if I can work with it. Yeah, it just feels better. Already faster in Sector 2. Probably lost it in Sector 1 when I slid out on turn 1. I don't know how those guys could drive with a helmet. I always feel like I have to stretch my neck in the middle of these races. Okay, let's see if I can get into the 37s here. No,
Give you a couple of good laps. If you can.
38.5. Rear sliding out there. Feels good here. Car's definitely recovering better. I think I'd like to try this even stiffer than what it is, just to see what it would do. Might require a little bit of adjustment on my driving style. Another thing we haven't talked about yet is caster, and maybe I'll do that next. 137.8, not great. I was looking at the clock, so I'm going to be slow in this sector. Tire temperatures did come up on the other side, which is good, really. Nice. 136.9. I have never broken into the 136 mark before. And I know there were a few sectors I was daydreaming on. All right. I will definitely keep that. Okay, so that was a 136.9. And again, I don't really feel like I'm super trying. I did have to fight that track a little more than some of the other settings. So the other ones were easier, but I can do that, or will at least learn to do that. And so I'm going to play around with this some more, and I think I'm going to try to make it even yet a little more stiff just to see what it'll do. And then we'll look at toe in briefly, and I'll explain that when I get there, and start working with the rear wing, which likely mean I'm going to have to readjust the height of the rear of the car as well, and then start looking at this whole stiffness thing again. All right, I'm going to keep driving. I'll let you know how I do.
If it doesn't feel good, you can come in and we'll change some stuff. We've got time.
So even going off the track, did better. Well, I guess that's not a good indicator of my best lap. Never mind. All right, so 37.2, 137.2. Not sure I like the way that this felt. Let's go return to the pit and look. Okay, so 914, 857. Let's go load up what I had previously. Yeah, just a little bit softer. I could feel it. Just could feel it just wanting to get away from me, and so I'm going to stick with this. All right, we'll move on to our next topic.